We could.
How are you today, Kye?
Yeah, I'm all good now, brother.
Good.
Great.
Good stuff.
Bit nervous, but I'm alright.
You be grand. So we're talking a little bit about socioeconomic discrimination and what does that mean to you?
So socio-economic discrimination means to me that it's not only means one thing, it could mean quite a different, like a few things. Like it could mean if you were going for an interview for a job or you were doing something in life that someone would discriminate against you for a reason that's completely out of your own hands. Like for example, if you were applying for a job and you're going for an interview and they say in your ear code, maybe heard your accent or something, they'd instantly look down on you and take someone else for that job that maybe is from a different area or has different accent and stuff like that. But it's not only about where you're coming from, it can also be about like what path you've taken in life, and if you're in care or if you are sick you might be discriminated against for being in a wheelchair. You could be discriminated against for not having a fixed address. Like a lot of homeless people around Dublin would be discriminated against daily for not having a house, but that's completely out of their control, do you know what I mean? It's not like, so that's what socio-economic discrimination means to me, and I think it's very important to get the 10th Act added in, so it will kind of help all bring this to light and bring a lot more awareness onto it, so hopefully it'll stop a lot of people being discriminated against in the future.
So you mentioned that it's not only like areas that are discriminated against, sometimes it's people without a post.
Definitely, like I've myself personally grown up in care, like so I've, since I'm 3, I'm 20 now, so I would have lived everywhere around Ireland, and it's not just where you come from, like there's a lot of disadvantaged areas around Dublin, like so, but there's also a lot around Cork. It doesn't matter where you come from, you could wear different type of clothes and what would normally fit into the everyday life and you'll still be discriminated against because of that, you know what I mean? And it's not right, like it just really isn't, and it's not just all down to one thing. There's a wide variety of things you can be discriminated against for by different people, you know, and it needs to stop because we're all the same, we're all equal, you know what I mean, we're all exact same, so yeah.
Can you give maybe a few examples of who you think experience discrimination?
Of course, like one example I think is very discriminated against is the fact that when you're in care and you're a child growing up in care, you mightn't have that like authority figure constantly out throughout your life. So like when you turn to 18, you're given, some people, not every people, are given the opportunity when they turn 18 to go into what's called aftercare housing. But they're mainly given a 6-month short, like a 6-month stage, you know what I mean? But for some reason, out of my hands, I don't know what the reason is, I've actually been in aftercare for 2 years, and I've recently been told it's because someone that was in the social worker department is trying to fight for me behind the scenes to stay there. I'm grateful for it, but I think everyone should be equal, and it shouldn't just be happening for me, it should be happening for everyone that's coming out of care, because I'm lucky, do you know what I mean, in that sense. But what about other people that are just literally given the opportunity to maybe go to, after the 6 months, student accommodation, but what happens when that course is done? Who do they turn to? Like if you're in care, you're not in care because you have the dad that you can turn to, a dad to turn to. Your circumstances are different, do you know what I mean? So there's no support there, and for anyone to turn to that's leaving care, and that's how the addiction and then no jobs and all comes into play, because they actually don't know what to do, what path to take in life, because you're not being guided in the right way. So, and even down to little things like trying to get a new doctor or trying to get a credit union, they always look for a fixed address, and this comes into play with the homeless as well. Most homeless people obviously haven't got a fixed address that they can turn to, so they can't, for example, open a bank account without a letter of proof of address. They can't get a new doctor, they can't do anything, open a credit union. So how does anyone expect people to better themselves when they're constantly being discriminated against by everyone? Do you know what I mean? For things that are completely out of their hands, it needs to stop. That's why I think it's so important that the awareness we're bringing to it now at the minute, you know what I mean, just to hopefully help lessen the discrimination a bit for people.
Amazingly said. Do you think that, you mentioned addiction as one of the issues for
big
some
time
people? So
like with addiction is very close to my heart, like, because I've seen it struggling, I've seen a lot of people struggling that will be close to me, do you know what I mean? But no addict decides to wake up one morning and say, right, I'm going out today and I'm going to be strung out on drugs. Nobody wants that, do you know what I mean? Everyone is suffering with their own demons in their own head, and I think that sometimes in life your worst enemy can be our own brain. But there's no support. Like, if, for example, if you're walking down the street and you see some homeless person maybe asking for spare change, some people just look down your nose and say, oh no, that's not right, it's for drugs. That's not right at all. There's a man actually at the minute on O'Connell Bridge, and his stories after only coming out recently, he's there ages. But basically what happened was his daughter died, his wife became an alcoholic to deal with this, and then she wasn't paying off the mortgage bills. She died of the alcoholism, and now he's left on the street. Do you know what I mean? Because he has no house. But he's been discriminated against constantly by people walking across that bridge, looking at him, asking for money, but nobody knows what's after happening in his life. Nobody knows his story, do you know what I mean? He wasn't after getting himself on drugs. He just had a different circumstances altogether, but people presume because he's on the street that he's on drugs. And even if he is on drugs, where's the help for him? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's disgraceful, to be honest, in my eyes, that our own people are constantly looking down on our own people, because we're all equal, do you know what I mean? Like, nobody's better than anyone. And just, if you walk down Dublin City, you'll see it anytime. You'll see it probably 10 times walking down the street, do you know what I mean? And to me, it's not right at all. Do you know what I mean? I think we've a lot more struggles in life than to be constantly putting other people down that just don't need it, do you know what I mean? We've too much to deal with, and that's just one thing we shouldn't be having to do, in my thoughts, you know.
Absolutely. Can you think of any ways that we could lessen discrimination besides this law, like any systems we could put in place to help people?
Definitely, like, I think towards the homeless, like, you know what I mean, I think something as little as saying, how are you today, acknowledging that person, not walking by the person looking down your nose, saying, how are you, sitting there for 5 minutes talking to that person. I'm not joking, it makes their day. The likes of aftercare, when I was in aftercare, I was in loads of different houses, so nobody actually, for example, when you're growing up and you're in aftercare, you're 13, 14, 15, they're the years your mother, your father, whoever's at home, your grandparents will be teaching you how to cook, how to wash your clothes, how to dress yourself, how to save money, and how to basically live your life for the rest of your life. But when you're in care and you're being constantly moved around, there's nobody keeping track of that. So you're not learning your life skills, you're not learning how to value money or save money, and then you're at 18 years of age, you're just out. So the way I think you could help that situation would be, when someone comes into care, they're obviously struggling with trust from the get-go, because they're after being tore away from their family, what they're comfortable with, they don't want to be in care. So I think if they had one stable person, for example the social worker, and that social worker follows them throughout their care system and doesn't keep swapping and changing, because if it's out of their hands whether their houses have to change, that's not what they can deal with. But the social worker could say the same, so that maybe that child could feel that they have one person to turn to, and that person is actually there to listen to them, and then that social worker could follow that child's growth throughout their life, to realise, to make sure that they know how to do their washing, know how to save, know how to cook for when they do turn 18, even if the housing crisis is still the same, because we've no control over that at the minute, that they still know how to help better themselves and help themselves, the resources they can go to, the places they can go to get the help and the supports that are offered to them, because nobody is there telling these people what is actually offered to them, do you know what I mean? So how does anyone expect us to know? We're trying to learn and grow out of people, do you know what I mean? But when there's nobody to teach us, we can't. So we go to what our friends are doing, what our age is doing, what our age group areas are doing. That's how everyone keeps, nothing good comes from it, do you know what I mean? So I always do think it's very important to teach people, because you can't expect to know otherwise, do you know what I mean? Or even point them in the right path when you haven't got your parents there, your family. You need someone to do it, do you know what I mean? So maybe if a social worker was just a bit more consistent and one person stuck, it might just help that person a bit more later in life. So I think maybe it might help a bit.
That's really important.
Yeah. Because like, yeah, I myself personally would have struggled with trust all my life. I wouldn't have trusted anyone. But in my experience, if that little thing had been changed when I was younger and that one consistent person was there, I do reckon that would have helped me a lot. Do you know? Just to point me in the right direction.
And do you think young people, especially people who grow up in care, have a lack of trust in the system?
100%. And the reason for this is because when you grow up in care, you might have had a very chaotic family, or your family might have been in crisis for whatever reason, and whether it's drugs, whether it's financial problems, whether it's problems with your mum or dad, it's chaotic for whatever reason. You're taken out of that environment for a reason. So you're not gonna, when you're taken away from everyone you know. I was 3 when I was taken into care, so I didn't know anyone but my mum, my dad, all my life. So I was whipped out. I didn't know who any of these social workers were, any of the foster families were. I didn't trust anyone, because they were after taking me away from my ma. Do you know what I mean? At that such a young age. So no, I didn't. And then, to be honest with you, they're not actually always honest. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes social workers give you what you want to hear, so you don't kick off. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't help in the long term. Do you know what I mean? Because that's how the lack of trust goes into your later life then, and you struggle with it later life. Do you know what I mean? So I do think trust is a big thing, and I think if it was something you're showed from a young age, and it's shown to you and how to trust people, that you will carry that in and later in life and not be so doubtful in yourself. Do you know what I mean? And it does. I always just believe what you put into a child when they're younger is what you're going to get out of the child when they're older. That's what I live by, do you know what I mean?
That's really beautifully said.
Thanks. It's just, well, I think.
Yeah.
Because we're on social work, it's not really related with. We try to highlight positive action, and the fact that you stood up in Trinity,
Yeah.
and spoke to social work students. Why were that important to you? You can say a few words and maybe explain a little bit what you did.
So we done a talk there a few weeks ago to social work students in Trinity College, all about and trying to bring in the Act for the socio-economic discrimination, and I found this very important, especially as a care leaver myself, to kind of give the students in Trinity an insight of what the child is feeling, not what the books are telling them we're feeling or not what they should be doing. I just felt it's very important for them to hear what I went through, because when they're bringing that onto their future career, and I mentioned that in the Trinity College about the trust issues and all, and a lot of the students after the class and after the lecture that we've done came back up to me and said that they're definitely going to bring that a lot further in their career. And I think that just hearing from someone in care will give them a broader outlook on the care system than what they're hearing from their colleagues, because their colleagues haven't, I'm not saying they haven't, but the majority of them wouldn't have lived through the care life, do you know what I mean? So I think it's very important to hear from someone's point of view that's been through it and lived it, do you know what I mean? So they can bring that in and hopefully help someone in the future that's in care and that's struggling, you know, because it's very important to have that one person, and as I said, and them people that we're down in Trinity could be that one person that their child trusts. And it's just very important, you know. Because you wouldn't be, like, if you could turn to your man, your dad all the time, you wouldn't be in care, do you know what I mean? So you need that person. We're no different in that, like, I don't see why I should be discriminated against for the fact that my dad weren't in the position to have me, do you know what I mean? But all my life growing up, I was discriminated against for that fact, even without people realising they were doing it, do you know what I mean? And that needs to stop, because, like, I'm trying to better myself, but even throughout life, when you're trying to go forward in life, it always comes back to that, do you know what I mean? So it's very important just to bring awareness to it and try to help it stop, for not me but for other people growing up in care that's going to be going through the care system, to help them, make it a little bit easier for them, do you know? That's why I found Trinity very important.
That the world lacks a sort of empathy when it comes to understanding.
Yeah, because you have to realise, like, when I'm not being funny, I'm grateful I'm here, but I did not ask to be born, nobody asked to be born, do you know what I mean? And when you are born into an unstable family, that's not the child's fault, that's not anyone's fault, do you know what I mean? So I think there should be a member of authority to come in, obviously not like the social services, nothing like that, but just to make sure that your actually personal human needs are being met. You're growing, like, you're learning, because you learn the most when you're a baby and when you're in the teenage years, your adolescent years, and your brain is like a sponge. But when you're in care and you're not being taught anything, how does anyone expect people to live throughout life and not to be in the revolving door of prison, or not to be homeless, or not to be on drugs, to take the easy route out? Because we don't know the right way unless someone teaches it to you, do you know?
Definitely.
I was just happened to be very lucky in life to have good friends around me and the support I had around me, do you know what I mean? But there's a lot of people now in my position that aren't as lucky as me and just don't get that opportunity in life, and unfortunately that's the way the system is in 2022, and I'm hoping to be a part of that change, that can get that change for the future, do you know what I mean? That'd be very good for the people coming up through care.
Yeah, my last question is, I guess you've already discussed a bit of what's helped you, like, speaking out.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that has helped you grow in spite of the discrimination that you faced?
Definitely, I think for me a lot of it was because, like, I would have been, when I was younger, I was 12 to 13 and all, I would have been in a very chaotic environment, do you know what I mean? And I lived that environment since I was younger, and then I realised as I grew older, like, that I don't want that life, do you know what I mean? But I was very lucky in them circumstances, because a lot of people in care are in care since they're young, so they're very sheltered from the age that they're in care to the age that they stop being in care, so they don't know what it's like to live in a chaotic lifestyle or live without a house, do you know what I mean? So I was very lucky that I understood that side of life, so when I turned 18 I got my act together, like, the way I had to, because I knew what it was like. But all the people I've witnessed that's gone in my aftercare house have not got a clue. They've never even been to a nightclub, they've never been allowed to do anything, a sleepover or anything, because they're in the care of the state and the state's responsible for them, so you're not allowed to do anything. And that's, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's not, you have to protect the kids in care, but when you turn 18, like, it's not normal, do you know what I mean? Like, you have to, yeah, like, you have to learn from somewhere, you have to be able to do it, like, you know.
You have to learn your independence.
I had to learn my independence myself because nobody else taught me, and I was lucky enough to have a head on my shoulders. I actually could do that, but I've witnessed 30, 40, 50 people in the last 2 years in aftercare that's genuinely relapsed in every way, and there's 2 people in my time in 2 years in aftercare that haven't relapsed and that are still sober, and that's in 2 years. I've seen 10, like loads of people, do you know what I mean, about 30 people, and they're all on the street now relapsed. But it's because they haven't got the guidance in life to help it, and they've been discriminated against when they're trying to better themselves in any way, do you know? So, and even like the one thing, the last thing I want to add is, if you were to try, even if you had no education, and you were to try better yourself by going back to education as an a mature student, that when you go into that college automatically expects you to be able to do this, this and this. But people like colleges don't take into consideration the lifestyle someone may have lived from when they were younger, that they genuinely haven't got that knowledge of skill or education, and that's not looked at all either, do you know what I mean? And it's not because I don't want to do it, it's because maybe we weren't given the opportunity in life to sit our exams and do this and learn all this, because our lives are so chaotic, do you know what I mean? So there should be a system in place in the schools that are for these type of situations, do you know what I mean, that will just give you an extra bit of help or an extra hand or whatever if you need it. So
Definitely.
that's just the last thing I'll add.
Thank you for talking to us.
No
today.
problem.
You did amazing.
Thanks very
Really.
much.
Jeez.